I'm going to teach you how to integrate PuppeteerSharp into an MVC web application. Why, you might ask? Well, I was just recently tasked with replacing WK HTML to PDF with a better, faster solution. And I found this website that compared a variety of different PDF generators. And out of it, the best one was PuppeteerSharp. The reason it was the best was we needed JavaScript and CSS to be able to be executed, and it needed to be fast. So when you look at this chart, you can see that both WK HTML to PDF support this, as well as PuppeteerSharp. However, under performance, PuppeteerSharp has high, whereas WK HTML to PDF has medium. We've been successfully using WK HTML to PDF for years now. However, we finally hit a tipping point where the performance just isn't good enough. And so I wanted to create this tutorial so you wouldn't go through what I went through a couple of weeks ago, which was throwing my head back, throwing it forward, slamming on my desk, even getting up, throwing. Okay, maybe the chair throw was a little too much. I'm gonna break down today's video into 7 steps. The first thing we need to do is install the NuGet package, PuppeteerSharp. The second thing we need to do is automatically download the browser on first startup, as well as we need to launch it on first startup. Once we've launched the browser during startup, now we're ready to go and we can generate PDFs. That'll be step 3. Step 4 will return the PDF to your browser as a download so that you can open it and save it for later. Step 5 will make sure that we close the browser once we're done the application, so that way we don't leave a whole bunch of exes of Chrome open when we're not using it anymore. And finally, we'll test it. To test it, we'll just create a simple HTML page that will have a basic form for HTML in a text box that will submit that HTML to our PDF generation. To get started, I've created a blank MVC application. Well, basically blank. It has the home controller with a couple views that we'll later on use to test our implementation. So with your MVC project, the first thing we need to do is add the NuGet package. To do that, we're going to click on the project, right click, choose Manage NuGet Packages. And then under the Browse, we're going to search for PuppeteerSharp. And we'll find it, and we'll go ahead and we'll click Install. Just to save a little bit of time, I've already installed it. Once it's finished installing, we've completed step 1. Now, for step 2, we need to automatically download Chrome when our IIS application, or I guess our MVC application, starts up. To do this, we're going to modify the global ASX file, and on application start, we're going to call our function to download Chrome. There's quite a lot of code in this project, so I'm not going to actually type it all in place because I just honestly can't even remember it all. So I have the code all completed, and I'm just going to go through things one by one. To get started, the first thing we need to do is we need to set our location to the bin directory. The reason we need to do this is we need to download Chrome, and because of IIS and its user policies, we need to be in a directory that our app pool user has access to, and that is the bin directory. So to do this, we're going to get the base directory of our project and add bin. We're also then going to set the current directory to there. When we go later on to download Chrome, we'll be in that directory already. And finally, we're going to call a function called initialize async inside of a Puppeteer browser manager class that we're going to create in a second. And we also need to do getAwaiter, getResult, because this is asynchronous and we want to wait for Chrome to completely finish downloading before we do anything else. So next up, to keep our code organized, I've created a folder called PDF Generator, which you can too by simply right-clicking the project, choosing Add, and then New Folder. Once you've created your folder, we're going to make a new class called Puppeteer Browser Manager. So to do that, we're going to right-click on our folder, click Add, choose Class, and type our name appropriately. As you saw, we called the function initialize async. So let's go ahead and create that function. and it accepts the path that we defined earlier to the bin directory because Chrome will need that to download it here. I'm going to skip over these couple things here, which is just how to return the browser once it's already created and initialized, as well as using a lock to make sure that we don't have any thread safety issues. So to begin, we need to create a new object called browser fetcher options. And what we want to do is we just want to provide the path to where we want to download it to. So it's going to be the bin directory plus Chromium. Next up, we're going to create the browser fetcher option that takes our browser fetcher options. And finally, to finish downloading it, we're going to call our browser fetcher plus download async, and we're going to tell it to grab the latest stable version of Chrome. And that's it. We've now got our code successfully running to download Chrome on first launch. And that completes step 2. And we're already in the same function where we want to launch it. And as I mentioned earlier, for step 3, we also want to launch the browser on startup of our application. To do this, we're going to create a new object called launch options. We're going to tell it to run Headless true because we don't want it launching an actual Chrome browser. We're going to give it an executable path, which is the result of our download async called revision info, and provide the get executable path. Finally, we want to instantiate some arguments like no sandbox, disable GPU, etc., just to try to make this run a little bit faster. And with those launch options, we're finally going to run Puppeteer, launch async, and provide them. It's going to return back a Puppeteer browser, which is a reference to Chrome. And we're going to use a lock, and we're going to set our public variable browser so that we can use it in future calls. And so now we've downloaded the application, we've launched the browser, and we're ready to actually do the magic. And that completes step 3. Step 4, generating the PDF. All right, we've actually hit the fun part. Now it's time to generate the PDF. I've made this basically empty controller called PDF controller inside of my controllers folder. What you'll see here is it generates a new Puppeteer generator class. We'll make this in a second, and assigns it to the variable PDF service. And then it runs PDF service generate async, passes in our HTML that I'll show you a little bit later for how we build that form, and accepts the result. So let's look at generate async. While this function looks a little bit complicated, it's not doing too much. To start with, we want to take our HTML and create a file with it and save that to disk. So we're simply going to take a GUID and add .html to it. Next, we're going to create a task so that we can run all of our code inside of an asynchronous thread and then return back the results. So the first thing we need to do is we need to access our global browser that we created a few minutes ago in the global ASX file. And so to do that, we're going to call our previous class Puppeteer Browser Manager and get browser. We won't need to look at that just yet. Next, we need to take our HTML and write it to our file name that we generated above. And now here's where the magic comes. We're going to take our browser and we're going to launch a new page. What this means is in our Chromium that's running Headless, it's going to actually launch a new tab just like you would in normal Chrome. And we're going to take our file name and we're going to append this file : with our file name, so that way we can provide that to Chrome and say, go to that file and wait for the navigation to finish. At this point, if we weren't running Headless, we would see Chrome open a new page and navigate to our file. At this point, it actually hasn't done anything yet. It's just navigated the file, hasn't generated any PDF. So to do that, we're going to create a new class of PDF options. In this case, we're going to tell it to be letter format. We want to print any background. We can also display header and footer if we want to, and provide that with custom HTML. And with this, it will actually add a header and a footer to each page. Next, we want to set the scale. I found 0.8 to be a good size based on my HTML and where my font sizes are to make them not too large. You can change this as you see necessary. And finally, we need to set some margin options. Again, you can adjust them as you see necessary. And finally, it's time for the magic. With our new page that we created earlier, we're going to tell Chrome to PDF stream using our PDF options. And finally, we're going to create a new memory stream and return our PDF stream as an array of bytes. So that way we can return the file afterwards back in our controller. And once we're done that, we're going to make sure that we delete the file just so we don't leave a whole bunch of HTML files in our bin directory. And now that we've turned our byte array, it's time to move on to step 5, downloading the PDF. So again, back to my PDF controller that I've made a new function called generate. It returns back an action result, and it accepts a string of HTML. And it's HTTP post, so that way in our test form, we can actually just use a form, post it to it, it'll generate a PDF and download it for us. So to do that, we take the byte array and we simply tell MVC to return a new file with our byte array. We're going to tell it to force download, and we're going to just call the file right now test.pdf. I'll show you how to test this in a second. And now it's time for step 6. We want to make sure that we clean up our browser when our application is done. So back in our global ASX file, similar to the application start, we need to add a new function called application end. And inside of that, again, we're going to call our Puppeteer browser manager, and we're going to dispose of it, and we're going to wait for it to completely dispose and clean up all of the application. Whew, that was a lot of stuff. Don't worry, there's a lot of code in here, and I'll provide a link to a GitHub repository so that way you can see it yourself and follow along. And now it's time for our final step. We need to test it. To test it, I've just simply taken the index.html file for the home controller and just changed it so that we're going to do a form post to our function called pdf/generate. We're going to simply have a text area with HTML and a submit button to generate it. When we enter our HTML in here, we click submit, it'll generate the PDF, and then it will automatically download it for us. So I'm going to hit F5 and I'm going to run our application. Now, as you can see, our application is running. Very basic. Sorry, I didn't do any styling. I just wanted to show it. Now we have a simple text box that we can enter our HTML in and then click generate. And finally, I'm just going to paste some very generic HTML into this form and click generate. And now it's going to run our code, create a PDF, and automatically download it for us. As you can see, it's created a test.pdf. Now inside my HTML, I've just put an H1 tag for end your if, an H2 tag for helping you solve those tough coding problems since 2009, and finally a simple paragraph tag just saying welcome, here we are generating PuppeteerSharp. That's it. As I mentioned, I'm going to create a link to the GitHub repository where you can download the code yourself and see it running. That's all for today. Happy coding!